Hello and welcome back to Radical Disruption, or if this is your first time here, welcome. I am honored that you are here tuning in. This episode is all about trial reels and whether or not they're worth your time or just another pointless Instagram feature that Instagram has put out to overwhelm us, to confuse us, to complicate things. That is what this episode is all about. But before I dive in, I want to share a behind the scenes look at what is going on in my personal life. Now, I went back and forth a bunch of times debating on whether or not to share this, and the conclusion that I came to is that it's so easy to look at someone's life on Instagram and just look at that and be like, oh, they have it all together. And whether or not like people are good at sharing, the behind the scenes on Instagram stories, like it still is a curated version of someone's life. And over the last few weeks, and I would even say like last few months, I have done a very poor job at really showing the behind the scenes of my life because I've just been drowning. And it made me think about that I should share this because I was talking with one of my friends who also runs her business. And anytime that I meet with someone in person and like we start talking and they're sharing about the things that are going on in their life and all the things that they're navigating on top of running a business, I'm like, why do we not talk about this more? Like, I just think it makes, at least I feel this way sometimes on social media. I like look at other people and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're running freaking thriving businesses. How are they doing it? How are they keeping how are they just keeping everything together? How do they do it? And so I am here to share that I am far from perfect and that I am in a season of my business right now where I feel like a chicken with my head cut off because of everything that is going on in my life. And I don't think I'll probably go into this depth anywhere on social media just because I don't even have the capacity to do so right now. So you're getting like the real true behind the scenes look at what is going on in my life and how I'm navigating that in business. But I'm not going to go into like in depth on that because truthfully, I haven't there's a lot of lessons that I know I'm going to learn and a lot of takeaways that I know I'm going to be able to bring to the podcast and share in future episodes. But right now I'm just drowning and I'm just trying to get through. So I'm not going to share like a whole like lesson on like, this is what I'm learning in my business because this episode is about trial reels and we will get there. But what's going on? So I guess I was going to say flashback. Flashback, rewind to November of 2024. My husband went on a 10-day dirt biking trip and I was with Remy and I decided to go down to spend some time with my family while he was gone. And I found out that I was pregnant during that time period. And so for 10 days, I kept the secret. Only I knew that I was pregnant for 10 days, which it's really hard keeping that secret, especially from your spouse that you talk to every single day. And during that time period, I just kept thinking about, now I'm going to have to navigate maternity leave and I'm gonna have to go through that whole season of having a newborn and no sleep and all that again and just thinking about business and all of that. And then we decided that we wanted to move and think about moving seriously and buying a house seriously, and it's something that we had toyed around with the idea of for quite some time now. So it wasn't like necessarily a new idea. We had actually looked at land and almost bought land in, I think it was July, maybe August of 2024, but ended up falling through. And so we went back to the drawing board and we decided once I found out that I was pregnant again, that we definitely wanted to move. And so that process, we're like, okay, it's going to take about 6 months for us to find a house and like the perfect property that we want to live in and all that good stuff. Because we wanted land, we wanted to be outside the city. We were a little bit picky about what we wanted. And so we're like, oh yeah, we have about 6 months. I think from the time that we we started talking to our realtor and the time that we like looked at our house was like 3 weeks or something. And so it was 2 or 3 days prior to New Year, we went and looked at one house. This is the only house that we actually looked at in person. We looked through a bunch of houses on Zillow, but we went and looked at one house in person and we're like, this is the house, this is where we want to be. And so we ended up putting in an offer on that house. The offer got accepted. And as of right now, hopefully, as you're listening to this episode, we are closing on the house. Our closing day is today. So if all goes well, we'll be closing on the house today, which is so exciting. And so on top of having a baby, now we are moving. And then on top of that, we were going to rent out our house. So we have like anywhere between 6 to 10 people a week that are coming through and looking through our house just to see if they want to rent it and all that. And so we're talking to a bunch of people. We have a bunch of people that are touring. We have applications and we have all these other things that are happening. And when you have people coming into your house, the house has to be clean and you have to set aside time. And so navigating, it's almost like having like coaching calls. And me, I've had coaching calls in my business for a really long time. And so to have like all these, I actually have used Calendly to schedule all these people to come to our house. So I have like a whole system in place because I'm like, I don't have time to be doing all this manually. So thank goodness for business teaching me that. Like I have a type form that people fill out and that for the initial application, and then at the end it gives them a Calendly link where they can book, and so then I get a notification and all that. So systems and automations. But I have all these almost like calls on my schedule. They're not calls, obviously, it's just people who are touring the house. But I'm like, this is weird to be back in this stage where I have so many things that are on my calendar. I'm like, I do not love this. So that is all happening. And then I planned like a baby moon before I even knew that we were moving. And so we have a trip in there. I have a business trip that is actually happening on 3 days from now, which will have happened like a month ago, basically, by the time this episode launches. But just so much that is going on, and that's not even to include any of the actual running of a business. And so I'm just really trying to take things one day at a time. But I just wanted to share that because it's exciting. Obviously, I'm excited to move and we're going to be closer to family and it's all wonderful, but I am seriously in a season of I'm trying not to drown and trying to figure out my business. I had all these visions for 2025 being my biggest year and like launching all these programs and doing all these things. And now I'm like having to come to terms with the fact that, I mean, it still could 100% be my biggest year. I'm not putting that off by any means, but a lot of the projects that I wanted to do, I just know that I'm not going to have the capacity to do so. It's in almost a season of just accepting things that come and taking things one day at a time, which is like not at all how I like to roll in my business. And especially with me having all these big plans of all these programs that I wanted to launch. And actually one of the episodes that I'm recording today, which will come out for you, I don't know, either next week or the week after, is about, that nothing in business is it's not a hurry, it's not an emergency. And so I'm really in that season of sitting with that. Again, I'll talk more about that in a future episode, so stay tuned. But all that to say, that's what's going on. So you got the full life update. But thanks for listening to that. Really, I just needed to tell someone. I just need someone to listen because I just feel like there's so much that's going on where I'm like, I just need someone to listen. So thanks for being my listening ear. Now, let's dive into the episode, what you're actually here for, which is trial reels. Now, this podcast is basically like a snippet of what it would be like to be inside of IG University, where I test a feature and then I tell you whether it's worth your time or not. And there's a bunch of features that come out on Instagram. I would say about 99... Yeah, I was going to say 99, maybe 98%. That's probably a little bit more realistic. 98% of them are just time sucks, meaning that like they're not actually worth your time and energy and they're pointless to utilize and really don't do anything for your business. So I'm going to talk about trial reels and if it's worth it to spend time on it. And if you like this episode, definitely check out IG University, which is linked in the show notes, because this is like a snippet of what you would get inside IG University. Now, my experiment with trial reels started when I got a text from my friend Kara, and I met Kara at the Flowdesk retreat in Portugal last year, and she is a creator and she has a massively successful business. And she messaged me and she's like, I'm so curious to know what your thoughts are on trial reels. And I think I had gotten access to trial reels maybe 3 or 4 days prior to her texting me. And I'm not going to lie, I had this, I want to say like pre-opinion. I don't know if that's actually a thing, but I had this opinion about trial reels before I'd even tested trial reels, that trial reels were stupid and a waste of time. And so when she texted me, I was like, oh, I actually haven't even tried out trial reels. Maybe I should actually try them instead of just like me coming up with an opinion just to have an opinion. And so I posted a trial reel. I think it was like an hour or two after she had texted me. And I gave it, I think it was 72 hours in trial. So not just the normal 24-hour window before Instagram gives you the insights to then post to your feed. I gave it 72 hours and guess how many views it got? Drum roll, a whole whopping 2 views. 2 views. That is not, I'm not lying. I literally have screenshots of it because I was crying. I was like, this is actually humiliating. 2 views. I haven't gotten 2 views, I don't think ever, on my Instagram account. Even like when I had 500 followers. I don't think I had 500 followers when Reels were a thing. I think I had around like 2,000 followers, but I never have gotten 2 views. I was like, this is actually humiliating. And so I texted Kara back and I was like, I got 2 views on my trial reel. I was like, this is stupid. And Kara had posted a trial reel, and it was actually a repost of one of her top performing reels. I think her reel had gotten 1.5 million views, and so she reposted that into a trial. And I think her trial within the first 24 hours had gotten 1,500 views, which, if you know anything about trial reels and you've tested trial reels, it's actually a pretty good number. But 1.5 million versus 1,500, like, there's no comparison there, right? And I'll talk a little bit more about what I recommend if you are going to be posting to trial reels. But that was my first kind of taste with trial reels. And then I got to thinking how similar trial reels are to a feature that Instagram already has. Now, before I go into that feature, and I promise that this is relevant to trial reels are basically Instagram's newest feature to post a reel that doesn't get shown to any of your followers. It doesn't appear anywhere on your feed or your Reels tab. Like, it doesn't appear anywhere on your Instagram account. And it is, I think it's Instagram's way of helping you to kind of get out of your head and understand what content is or isn't going to perform well before you then post it to your feed. And so that's, I guess, the intention behind trial reels, to my knowledge, based off of what Instagram has said. And so again, it's just a way for you to post content, specifically reels. You can't do posts or carousels, specifically reels, and not have it shown anywhere on your Instagram account or to any of your followers. It is just purely shown to non-followers so that you can see how well your content is going to perform, so that you can then decide if you want to share that content with your followers. Now, something that's very interesting here is Instagram has had, I want to say for about a year and a half, maybe even 2 years now, an option where you can post your reel to just your Reels tab. Now, again, I promise there's relevance here, so stick with me. Right now, when you go onto Instagram, if you're just posting a reel like you would normally post, that reel is going to appear on your feed, and it's also going to appear on your Reels tab. Again, this is just the normal way of posting. Don't overthink this. If you just go to post a reel right now and hit share, this is how it's going to be posted. Now, the understanding is, or I guess if we're specifically talking about the algorithm, what happens if you post in this way, again, this is just the normal way of posting reels, you're not doing anything fancy, is your reel is shown to a small group of your followers. If those followers engage with your content, it's then shown to a larger group. If that audience engages, then it's shown to a larger group and a larger group and a larger group, right? And that's how you then start to reach non-followers, is if your community, the people who are already following you, are interacting with that piece of content, then it tells the algorithm, okay, if these people like it, then other people are going to like it. So then eventually it's going to get shown to non-followers. Again, this is just the normal way of posting. Now, there's another option, which a lot of people don't even know that this is an option and that you've had access to this option for a really long time, but there's an option for you to only post your reel to your Reels tab. So if you're looking at your feed, and I have a feeling that by the time that this episode even launches, that feeds are actually going to look very different, and there's going to be a lot of different tabs here. But if you're looking at your feed, let's just back up. If you're looking at your Instagram account and you have your little tabs, there's like a feed tab and then you have a Reels tab. So if you post to only the Reels tab, it's only showing up underneath the Reels tab. So it's not showing up on your feed, which is interesting. But the way that this works in the algorithm is that if you post a reel to just the Reels tab, it's only being shown, or mainly being shown, to non-followers. And why I say mainly is because if someone goes to your Instagram account and they go over to your Reels tab and they find that piece of content, and if they're following you, then they might see that piece of content, but it's not necessarily being pushed out to your followers, if that makes sense. And that piece of content is shown to non-followers. If those non-followers engage with it, then it's shown to more non-followers and more non-followers, and continues to grow thereon forth. That's not a word. That's not a term. It continues to grow. But what happens when you post to the Reels tab and it is shown to non-followers is those non-followers might not be your ideal client. And while the algorithm does try to find people who are your ideal follower, like, odds are pretty high that it's just being shown to a broad group of people, and those people might or might not find it relevant. And I would say majority of people generally don't find that piece of content relevant, just because it's being pushed out to just a wide audience, right? And so you see your reel posted to the Reels tab grow very, very slowly. And I actually did an experiment on this. I think it was like a 3-month experiment where I posted a bunch of content to just the Reels tab. And I want to say during that time period, I had posted around 30 Reels to just the Reels tab. Only one of them actually performed well. And when I say performed well, I'm specifically talking in terms of views and followers. All the rest of them did not perform well. And the one that did perform well actually took 6 weeks to perform well. So it took a long time to gain traction. And what I would suggest to people if they're just posting to the Rails tab, and you can still do this even to this day if you want to, there's still the option when you go to post your reel. If you go to post your reel, there's the caption where you can type in the caption. Underneath that, there's a bunch of options. One of the options that you can do is to just post to the Reels tab. It's a little toggle button that you can go and turn on. That's how you would then post to the Reels tab. But if you're going to post to just the Reels tab, you've got to give it time. It takes so much time to get traction. I would post to my Reels tab and I wouldn't even look at that reel for 2 weeks because that's how slow it would gain traction. Just to give you a little comparison here, when I post my reel just normally, so to my feed, and it also shows up on my Reels tab, generally within the first hour, I get to about 10,000 views. Generally. Now, if I just post to the Reels tab, generally within the first, I would say 24 to 72 hours, I get 1,000 views. So very, very, very different in terms of how quickly it's gaining momentum. Now, all that to say, basically what trial reels are is posting to just the Reels tab, but not having it appear anywhere on your Instagram account. So that's why I said I promise you it's relevant what I'm talking about, but I just thought that it was super interesting because you basically have the ability to do what a trial reel does prior to even trial reels coming about, because you could post to just the Reels tab. Now, the slight difference there is obviously if you post to just the Reels tab, people could still find that piece of content on your Reels tab. Whereas with trial reels, the trial reels appearing nowhere on your Instagram account, but very, very similar where that trial reel is being shown to mainly non-followers. And whether or not those non-followers like that piece of content is basically how Instagram is determining whether or not you should then post that piece of content to your feed and show it to your audience. So I guess another way of putting it would be like trial reels are kind of like paid ads on Instagram, but they're not paid. So it's a way for you to only target people who are not following you, and no one else can see it on your Instagram account. If they go to your Instagram account, they cannot see your trial reels anywhere on your Instagram account. Very similar to how a paid ad would be, right? If I'm running a paid ad, if you go to my Instagram account, you're not going to see that paid ad, right? You might see that paid ad show up on your Instagram stories or as you're scrolling your feed or something like that, but you're not going to see it on my Instagram account. And the same goes for trial reels. And so it's a really great way to target non-followers. Now, this all sounds great in theory, but that's two views, right? That's what I'm thinking at this time of me trying to experiment with trial reels. I'm like, 2 views, come on. But what changed my mind and why I came out of my anti-trial reels box is I actually saw a reel from another creator. She's not an Instagram expert. I want to say she's in this parenting, motherhood space, but she was saying that she was blowing up. Her following was growing so much, like hundreds of followers, thousands of followers from using trial reels. And she was saying that she was reposting all of her top performing content as a trial reel. And she's like, why would you not do this? Because it's like a paid ad, right? But not paid, right? Trial reels are not paid. I just want to make sure that that's clear. It's like a paid ad, but it's not paid because you're reaching specifically people who are not following you. And I was like, oh, that's genius. And it clicked in my head where I was like, oh, that makes sense. So I was like, well, I need to experiment and I need to see if this works for me as well, or if this is just like working for one person, right? And this is my experience. So I posted 50 reels to trial, and all of those reels combined brought in 128 followers, which is an average of 2.56 followers per reel. So basically, it took me 50 reels to bring in 100 followers using trial. 2 of those that I posted to trial, I then posted to my feed. And when I say posted to my feed, I actually took it. How do I explain this in a simple way? I didn't just use the button in trial that says post to feed, because there is a button that just says, do you want to post this to your feed? And you can post it to your feed. I took that exact piece of content, and what I had actually done prior to posting it in trial was I just duplicated it in my drafts so that I had two versions of it. One of them I posted to trial, and the other one I just kept in my drafts. What I then did is I took the draft and I posted it to my feed. And so I took two of those out of trial, right? Just meaning I posted it to my feed. One of those brought in 54 followers after that, and the other brought in 6 followers after that. And they had brought in 0 followers during trial, and they had not done well during trial. So just something I thought was interesting there. I have one other reel that is currently in trial, but it hasn't been posted for 24 hours yet, so I don't have any data on that to share. Now, the reels that did bring in the most followers during trial, they had actually been posted in trial for over 2 weeks. Some of them even had been posted for 4 weeks, so that's something that's interesting. And I just kept those in trial. I didn't post them to my feed. I just kept them in trial, and I had kept them in trial for almost 4 weeks, at least 2 weeks though, for the ones that had brought in the most amount of followers. And I say most amount of followers, I think my top, let me see, actually, I wrote down all of my top one in terms of bringing in followers was 35, and the next one after that was 17, and the next one after that was 10. And then I had majority of my reels in trial bring in 0 followers. All that to be said, I mean, do with it what you wish. Is that how you say that? However you want to take that information and do with it, that's what you can do. But my top reel that was in trial actually only has 11,000 views, which sounds like a lot, but outside of trial, this was one of the ones that I had reposted for my top performing pieces of content. It got over 150,000 views. So again, 150,000 views, 11,000 views. And I think I should have looked at this. I didn't look at this prior to hitting record, but I want to say that the one that I had posted to my feeds, the one that got 150,000 views, it brought in a bunch of followers. I want to say like hundreds of followers, but the 11,000 view one only brought in, that was the one that brought in 35 followers. Good, but not great, right? If I have to post 50 reels to trial in order to bring in 100 followers, that's a lot. That's a lot of effort, right? Some other things that I noticed is that talking reels consistently do better with not just reach, but also bringing in new followers. And that doesn't really surprise me because they're really good at trust building and brand building. That's the purpose of the reel, I would say, a talking reel. And so when you have trial reels that are reaching mainly non-followers, you do want to have a very good trust building reel because that's what's actually going to convert someone into a follower, right? Other interesting things. So I posted 10 new pieces of content to trial. So out of the 50, 10 of them were brand new pieces of content. They weren't reposted ones. 40 of them were reposted ones. All of the reposted ones were my top performing pieces of content from the prior year. So I looked at the last year, every single one of my top performing pieces of content. So my 40 top performing pieces of content were all the ones that I reposted into trial. All of them, so like the 10 new pieces of content that I posted, all of them did significantly better outside of trial. And same with even my reposted reels. None of my reels in trial even came close to the performance of my reels when I posted them to my feed. I had one reel that I reposted that brought in 2,000 new email subscribers and 78,000 views. And in trial, so that was when it was posted to my feed. When it was posted to my feed, it brought in 78,000 views and 2,000 new email subscribers. But when I posted it to trial, it only has 8 views. I kid you not. It only has 8 views, and it has been posted to trial for 2 weeks now. Okay, so it has plenty of time to gain traction. It has not gained traction. 8 views when that reel posted to my feed had 2,000 new email subscribers. What? Okay. Other things here. I have one single post that I shared, not in trial, just regularly sharing to my feed, that I posted during the same period of me doing all these trial experiments that brought in 143 followers. Just one post that I didn't post into trial at all brought in 143 followers. That's more followers than all 50 of my trial reels combined brought in. And that was from one single post that I posted to my feed. What are my thoughts here? To summarize, as you can see, I'm very heated on this. You always want to serve the people who are already in your community. If you're going to post trial reels, don't disregard them. Make sure that your trial content, especially if it's new content, is still making it to your feed, regardless of how it does in trials. Because how it does in trials is not a good indication of how it'll perform when it's posted to your feed at all. It is not a good indication. Please take that from me. The 10 new posts that I had posted into trial first, they all did crap. They all did very, very, very bad. All of those posts, when I brought them to my feed, over 20,000 views. Some of them brought in sales. Some of them brought in new email subscribers. Some of them brought in lots of followers. And if I had looked at how they did in trial reels and been like, oh, that got 10 views in trials and Instagram is telling me that it didn't do very well, I better not post it to my feed. I would have missed out on a huge freaking opportunity, okay? And the reason why I say this is because I had someone inside of IG University say, well, I posted a talking reel to trials and it didn't do very well. And I'm like, that is not a good indication of how it'll perform, okay? Your audience will tell you whether or not they like that, right? Always serve the people who are already there. Don't get lost in the pursuit of the many that you forget the people who are already there committed to you, okay? Serve them first. Now, if you want to repost some of your top performing content to Reels just to see how it goes, great. I'm not trying to say to not do that, okay? I always, always, always recommend testing it out for yourself and not just taking my word for it. But if you're going to do that, do it after you've posted to your feed for the day, after you've sold your offers, and after you've done your income producing activities. Basically, I'm saying there are better things that you can do to get followers and build your business than post to trial reels. But if you have time left over and you're like, hey, I want to repost some reels to trial, great, do that. Fantastic. But do it after you've posted to your feed, sold your offers, and done your income producing activities, okay? Don't let trial reels overtake the more important things that are actually going to move the needle in your business and get you to where you want to go on Instagram. Now, if posting to trials helps you to get out of your head and just like post content, if you're like, hey, it's so nice to just post it to trial and like it just, I don't even have to think about it. Like it just is helping me to create momentum and get into a routine with posting. Great. That's a different story. Use trial reels. But if it feels like it's just another thing that's adding to your plate, don't stress it. Okay. Focus on your feed strategy. That's going to give you way greater ROI than you posting to trial reels. Something else that's interesting too about trial reels, and this is what I would recommend doing if you're posting new content to trial reels, just to like, again, get out of your head, get in the momentum and routine of creating reels. Instagram has an option inside of trials. I don't know exactly where this is because I don't have it turned on my end, but they have an option where it can auto post to your feed after 24 hours. So that's definitely what I would have turned on if you're posting mainly new content to trial reels. If you're posting like reposted content to trial reels, I would not turn that on just because you don't want that reposted content getting posted back into your feed. You want to repurpose content if you're going to be bringing it back into your feed. So if you have a piece of content that performed well in the past and you want to bring it back to your feed, repurpose it. Don't repost it is basically what I'm saying. Now, all that to be said, the golden question that I know that you are asking yourself right now is, will Maya continue posting trial reels? Short answer, no. Long answer, also no. I posted 50 trial reels and the time and energy that it takes for the return, in my opinion, is just not worth it. I have to, if I'm doing a reposted one, I have to go into my feed. I have to find that reposted one. I have to bring it into Snap Insta. I have to download it and then I have to re-upload it to Instagram. I have to find an audio for that. I have to copy and paste the caption. If there's an automation set up on that, I have to set up a completely new automation for that. So I'm talking like some of the times, especially if it has an automation attached to it, we're talking like 10, 15 minutes. And it's like, you're thinking to yourself, okay, 10, 15 minutes. That's not that much time. But what else could I be doing in 10 to 15 minutes? So many other things. I could have created a whole new piece of content that I'm posting to my feed that brings in 10 times the amount of followers than this one trial reel, okay? Also, if I'm posting a new piece of content, I'm just going to post it to my feed because my audience is going to tell me how they like that piece of content more so than me having it posted to trial reels and be blasted to a bunch of non-followers. Okay. Again, this is my opinion. Go out, experiment with trial reels. If you've had a fantabulous experience with trial reels and like you're growing and you're thriving, shoot me a direct message, shoot me an email. I want to know. I want to know what your strategy is because my strategy was not working. But I feel like I did give it a really solid test. I mean, 50 reels is a lot to have in trials over 4 weeks. So, I mean, there were some days where I even posted 5 reels to trial in one day. And definitely leave. Oh, I should have included this earlier. I forgot to include this in my notes. But if you're posting to trials, if it's a reposted piece of content and you're not going to have the new piece of content that's being moved over to your feed, again, which I do recommend, please. Trials are not a good indication of how it's going to perform. So if it's a new piece of content, please make sure it at least makes it to your feed, okay? Whether or not you duplicate it and post it to your feed and leave the other one in trial, or you move the trial one to your feed, whatever it is, you do you, but at least make sure it gets to your feed. If it's reposted content, just leave it in trials. Let it soak, let it marinate, let it create momentum, because within the first 24 hours, it's probably not going to do very well, but over a few weeks, it might actually do well. So that's the summary. If you have any questions about trial reels, hit me up. Hopefully this answered a lot of your questions. And all that being said, if you have had a great experience, please shoot me a message. I would love to know what it is that you're doing because I did not have that same experience with trial reels.